Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental, maybe one of the toughest shifts for any organization, actually. We're looking at how you transform, a healthy group, could be a nonprofit, a church, even a startup, from just maintaining things, keeping the lights on, into something that actually reproduces itself, an outward flowing movement. We're digging into the ideas from legacy of multiplication, focusing on this intentional, biblical, and interestingly measurable strategy for reproduction.
Yeah, it's a tension everyone feels, right? That drift. It's almost inevitable once things get stable. The core problem is that organizations just naturally slide into prioritizing, let's say, the internal stuff programs, buildings, keeping the numbers up. They start judging success by who shows up and stays.
Instead of who gets equipped and sent out.
Exactly. So what we want to do today is give you the frameworks to, well, first spot that drift and then actually shift from just gathering people to genuinely sending them.
Okay, so it's more than just changing focus. It's like redefining what success even looks like. We're hitting three main things today. First, why just counting heads or dollars is often, well, the source calls it a measurement error that actually hurts the mission. Second, we'll lay out some new metrics, this multiplication dashboard that tracks real reproduction, stuff you can actually measure. And finally, that big leadership change moving from the founder who does everything to being more of a coach who sparks multiplication in others. Let's get into it.
Right. And the starting point has to be this core idea. Real success, lasting success, isn't about how big you are, your budget, how impressive you look. The legacy that endures isn't usually the monument, the nice building, it's the movement. And that kind of success, it comes down to obedience, being really intentional, and relational discipleship that can be passed on.
And it's fascinating. Like you said, the blueprint isn't new. It's right there in Acts 1:8. When you really look at that verse, it's not just inspirational. It's like a strategic plan. It's got these three key parts woven together. First is power, dunamis.
Yeah, and dunamis. It's crucial to understand what it's not. It's not about political pull or just having a really charismatic leader or flashy marketing. We tend to think that way now. But this is about a dynamic, spirit-given ability to, well, testify and do the work. If you try to fuel a movement just on personality or slick programs, you burn out fast. True multiplication needs something simple, durable, something everyone can actually access and replicate.
That clicks. So success isn't tied to how complicated your system is. That feels like a trap many fall into. Okay, second element?
Witness.
Martyria.
Martyria. It involves both, talking the talk and walking the walk. Proclaiming, yes, but the source really stresses living it, embodying the very life you're inviting others into. So for an organization, your culture, your choices, how you spend your time day to day, it has to match the mission. If not, the movement just dies.
And the third piece gives us the strategy, the geography of mission, that sequence. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. It's not just places on a map.
Not at all. It's pedagogical, right?
Right.
It teaches us how to expand, not just by adding more people to the main group, but by intentionally reproducing, sending out across these widening circles of cultural difference and physical distance.
Okay, so if that's the ideal, the blueprint, then the traps that stop this multiplication become really clear.
Absolutely. And the biggest one, maybe the sneakiest, is the maintenance mentality. It just prioritizes keeping the current members happy, focusing inward instead of the risky outward mission of reproducing. And it's tempting because it feels good. You get immediate results. You can see high retention, nice facilities, smooth programs.
That sounds exactly like what happens in companies, right? Departments protect their own turf instead of focusing on the bigger mission.
Right.
It's self-preservation, pretending to be good management.
Precisely. And that naturally leads to program dependence. Events start replacing relationships. Stack-run stuff takes the place of empowering and sending out everyday people. Which brings us back to the core failure, the measurement error. Counting attendance, counting activity, instead of counting actual reproduction, how many people were truly discipled and sent out to do the same.
Okay, so if attendance is maybe a vanity metric, and I think we can agree it often distracts us, what should we measure? You mentioned this multiplication dashboard from the source, metrics tracking reproducible outcomes. What does that look like?
Yeah, I've got to shift the question. Not did we run the event, but did we actually produce someone who can multiply? There are three main quantitative tools the source suggests. They help clarify the mission and kind of check the health of the soil, so to speak.
All right, let's hear them. The first one sounds intense. R, the reproduction ratio.
R. It's simply the number of new leaders you've developed who are also reproducing leaders, divided by the number of existing leaders you started with in that period. If R is less than 1, you're actually shrinking in your leadership pipeline, even if attendance looks okay. If R is greater than 1, you're multiplying. The source argues for aiming for, like, R 1.5 or more for a truly healthy movement.
Well, hold on. 1.5, that sounds incredibly high,
Yeah.
especially if you're just starting out or working with a small team. How do you stop that R ratio becoming just this pressure cooker, pushing people to produce shallow leaders just to hit a target?
That's the critical question, the guardrail. The goal has to be stewardship, responsible development, not just hitting a number. Look, if your R is consistently below 1, it's a diagnostic tool. It tells you something's broken in your system. Or maybe your current leaders are hoarding the ministry, not releasing it. But if you push R too high, too fast, without depth, that's where the second metric comes in. T, the time to first reproduction.
T. Okay, tell us about T.
T measures the median time in months from when someone fully engages in your discipleship or leadership development pathway.
Oh.
To DISO, when they successfully reproduce their first disciple or leader, the first person they personally mentor, train, and release. A low T suggests your pathway is working. It's efficient, probably simple, and it gives people agency quickly.
That's really interesting. So tracking that median time, what's a good T? And what if your T is like 3 years, 36 months?
Well, if your T is 36 months, you're almost definitely running a maintenance program, not a movement engine. It signals your pathway is probably too complicated, maybe too dependent on the professionals, or it requires so much specific knowledge that it just kills organic reproduction. The source suggests a healthy T should be well under a year, measured in months. It points to simple, repeatable habits being passed on.
Right. And to make sure we're not just churning out undeveloped leaders quickly, there's a third metric. D, the depth score.
D is crucial. It's a qualitative check, usually a simple rubric, maybe 0 to 5, assessing the actual spiritual maturity and practices of those being sent. Are they engaging with Scripture, praying, serving? Can they actually lead a simple discovery study or share their faith effectively? You absolutely have to measure depth alongside the rate and time, otherwise the reproduction might be wide but incredibly shallow and fragile.
This really does flip the script. Addition asks, how many people came to our thing? Multiplication, using RT and D, asks, okay, who did they develop? Who are they releasing? How many generations deep is this going? It changes everything.
And this circles back to that crucial guardrail. Measurement is a tool for stewardship. It serves the mission. It's not the mission itself. It can't become an idol. The sources are really clear. These metrics are meant to hold leaders accountable to sending, not just gathering. If using metrics makes you treat people like numbers on a spreadsheet or cogs in a machine, you've missed the point entirely. You've just created another performance culture, maybe with fancier language.
Okay, so let's say the metrics are looking healthy. We're seeing some reproduction. Where does that energy go? The sources say it naturally flows outward, right? Following that Acts 1.8 path. Let's talk about the actual geography of that expansion.
Exactly. Acts 1.8 isn't just theology, it's strategy. It maps out the scaling process across these 4 overlapping spheres. They're defined by cultural closeness and distance. First is Jerusalem. That's your home base, your local context, your neighborhood, your immediate network. This is where you learn faithfulness, practice relational discipleship close to home. The source talks about household theology. Your R ratio has to work here first.
Makes sense. Then you move outward to Judea.
Judea is that next ripple, regional expansion. Maybe neighboring towns, similar cultural groups nearby, sister organizations in the region. This step requires more coordination, scaling across spaces that are familiar but distinct. And honestly, the sources say a lot of organizations get stuck right here. They get comfortable in their Jerusalem and never really push into Judea effectively. They might send money elsewhere, but they don't reproduce regionally.
Interesting plateau point. Okay, the third sphere sounds like the real challenge. Samaria.
Yeah, Samaria is the boundary crossing. It represents those nearby contexts where there's friction, maybe ethnic tension, historical hostility, significant cultural differences. It's the mission field right in our backyard, the one we often ignore or misunderstand. Across the tracks, different language group, rival ideology. True reproduction here demands we actually confront our own biases, conscious or not, and really invest in understanding and listening across those divides.
That Samaria idea,
Yeah.
like it can feel daunting. I mean, if there's real hostility or deep-seated cultural differences, just, inviting someone for coffee really the next step. What do the sources suggest there?
That's a fair question. And no, it's usually not about a simplistic gesture. The emphasis is on intentional, often long-term investment and genuine listening. Crossing into Samaria isn't about barging in with our answers. It's about humility. The first step might be prayer, learning about the culture, finding bridge builders, showing up to serve their needs, not ours. It often starts with small relational acts that build trust over time, moving from maybe transactional interactions to something more like family.
Okay, that reframes it. It's about earning the right to speak, not just speaking. And finally, ends of the earth.
The global piece. This reminds us the mandate is worldwide. It pushes us to think and act globally, usually through partnerships, setting people relationally, supporting work far beyond our comfort zone, making sure we're engaged in the whole mission, not just the local slice.
And there's a practical tool for listeners here, right? The concentric map.
Yeah, it's super practical. Literally draw 4 circles on a piece of paper, label the center, Jerusalem, then Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. Then, in each circle, write down 3 to 5 specific names, places, or maybe people groups you feel called to engage. And here's the key. For each one, write down one immediate next step you can take this week. A prayer, a phone call, scheduling that coffee, researching that group. It forces you to move from abstract idea to concrete action. So we've talked about the mindset shift, the metrics, the geography, but the final piece, maybe the linchpin, is the leadership transformation. The sources really hammer this. The future belongs to the most reproducible organizations, not just the biggest.
Which means leaders have to embrace this send from mindset, judging their success by who they empower and release, not by how many people report to them or how big their immediate team is.
Yeah.
That's a massive identity shift for a lot of leaders, especially founders.
It's totally counterintuitive, isn't it? It feels like diminishing yourself. It echoes that John 3.3 Leo idea, he must increase, but I must decrease. The leader has to consciously, deliberately move away from being the main performer, the one doing all the key things, what the source calls operating in the founder's shadow, and move towards coaching, empowering, equipping others to actually own and lead the work themselves.
Let's unpack that founder's shadow a bit. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, the founder's shadow exists when everything important still relies on that founder's specific gifts, their charisma, their network, their knowledge. Maybe they're the only one who can really land the big donation or teach the core material effectively or lead the main meeting with that certain flair. Getting out of that shadow means, for example, the founder stops leading the main weekly training. Instead, they spend that hour coaching the person who is now leading it. It takes real humility. And frankly, time that many leaders feel they don't have because they're too busy performing the core functions themselves.
So coaching becomes the engine. It's what makes releasing people sustainable and healthy, right? So the whole thing doesn't just fall apart when the main leader steps back or leaves.
Absolutely. Coaching is the key practice. And the main tool for the coach isn't giving answers, it's asking disciplined questions, usually in a regular rhythm, like a weekly 30-45-minute check-in. The goal isn't to solve the other person's problems for them, but to help them develop their own agency and problem-solving skills.
What kind of questions are we talking about? Give us some examples.
They're usually focused on ownership and action. Things like, okay, thinking about this challenge, what outcome are you aiming for this week? Or what options do you see? What are the pros and cons of each? And critically, so what specific step will you commit to taking by our next meeting? And how can I support you, maybe remove a barrier, not do it for you? Oh. This approach helps cultivate those local indigenous leaders who can adapt the mission to their context, making the whole effort more resilient, less dependent on the center.
And for this coaching model to spread, to be reproducible itself, everything needs to be simpler. The whole culture has to value simplicity. We're not talking complex programs here. Low-tech, high repeatability stuff that anyone can learn and pass on.
Exactly right. 2 quick examples the source highlights. First, simple apprenticeships. One-on-one or maybe 1 to 3 relationships focused on formation. This is where the real learning happens. In relationship, trying things, getting feedback, correcting course. It's practical, hands-on training, not just sitting in a classroom.
Okay.
And the second, the 60-minute reproducible meeting template. Think of it as the opposite of a slick, highly produced event. It's a basic, predictable structure for a small group meeting. Maybe a quick personal check-in, looking at a piece of scripture or core text, practicing a relevant skill, like sharing your story or coaching questions, and then praying or committing to next steps. It's so simple that almost any volunteer can facilitate it, and more importantly, they can easily teach someone else how to facilitate it. That's how multiplication scales without needing more paid staff or complex infrastructure. Simplicity really is the spiritual discipline of the multiplier. The source keeps saying, complexity is the enemy of reproduction. So, wrapping this all up, What we've seen is that reproduction isn't just a nice idea, it's deeply theological and intensely practical. It's grounded in that core mission of being sent, but it only becomes real through intentional systems, strong relationships, and yes, strategic measurement. Really, it leaves you with a fundamental choice. Are you going to settle for maintaining what you have, which ultimately leads to stagnation? Or are you going to start building for intentional generative multiplication?
That ultimate legacy. It's probably not going to be the building size or the budget numbers. It's the movement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where everyone involved sees themselves as both learning and teaching, both being sent and sending others. So the final thought, the challenge for you listening, is this. What's one concrete thing you can do this week? Just one step to intentionally invest in something that will outlast your current role or efforts. How can you make your contribution truly generative, something that reproduces, rather than just preservative, just keeping things going? Maybe it's finding your Jerusalem, identifying that first apprentice, and starting that ripple outward.